Welcome back to another episode of Carry On with Carrie Fitz. I'm Carrie Fitz with Carrie Fitz Real Estate, and today I'm excited to have Allie Hoffman with me. She is our office manager. She has her real estate license, and she is also a first-time home buyer. She and her husband just purchased their home
A year
ago. And so today we're going to talk about what that looks like from an actual first-time home buyer. Allie is young, obviously. Even though she had a license before she bought her home, it's kind of a different animal to feel all the emotions that go along with go through the first time home buying process. So Allie, talk to us a little bit about what that was like for you.
First started looking when the rates spiked from low fives to mid sixes, and the market was quiet. No one was looking, and I thought, I'm crazy for looking. They're going to drop again. And I'm so glad that I actually bought a house with my husband at that time, because I was happy with my rate, and looking back, I'm so glad I bought when I did. You know, they always say the best time to buy a house was yesterday or last year. So,
5 years ago.
That's
the best time to buy a house.
The current market should not scare you. For some reason, I wasn't scared when the market was quiet. Things weren't going under contract as quickly because people were used to the 2s and 3s.
So you didn't have the competition.
I didn't have
You were
competition.
the only one at the party.
And I did have a lot of negotiation of my deal.
So overall, from start to finish, is there anything, because we talk about it all the time, but is there anything that you feel like you could have done better if you were to do it again, which I'm sure you will at some point? Is there anything you'd do differently?
I would recommend taking emotion out of it sometimes. We often let our emotions get the best of us, and I see, because we're in real estate, I see all the time emotions make people back out of contracts, or they make people jump too soon into buying a home. So kind of take the emotions out of it and be rational is one of the tips that I would
Well, great. And that's really good advice, because you want to do the smart thing. This is a money move. Yes, you're going to be living in the house, and it needs to have the location that you need and those types of things. But purchasing property, purchasing real estate really does contribute to your financial wellness, and it does build wealth. So you really do need to make smart moves based on what makes the most sense financially and really not emotionally. Right. So I think that's a really good point. As you went through the process, we just heard on the last episode from Matt Meisner about getting a loan. Were you ready financially? Did you have all your ducks in a row? And did you notice that process, being as prepared as you were, if you were, did that make it easier for you?
We built our credit at a very early age. We both went to college. I obtained student loans, and although you don't pay those immediately, it starts establishing your credit. And that's one positive thing about student loans, although it is debt, but it can be good to help build your credit early. My husband and I were together at the time out of high school, and he got a credit card, and I was like, oh, I've always heard, don't open a credit card. During it, we opened one of those Discover credit cards, and it ended up helping build our credit. You pay your bills on time, and you don't max out cards, and it's amazing what it'll do to set you up for your future. So.
That's great. And then, all right, so your finances are ready. You've decided you're ready. You start looking at houses. Did you look at houses only based on what you could afford?
I did this the wrong way. Don't do what I did. I was not pre-approved. When I saw this one house, it had all of the boxes that we needed. They were all checked. And I was like, let's just go to the open house and see. So we went to the open house, and then we were like, oh man, I don't know if we can even, if this is even in our ballpark. And we just fell in love with it, and we were waiting and waiting, because the competition there was not competition at the time. So we waited and waited, and then it had a price decrease, and we eventually were like, okay, let's get pre-approved. Because we didn't want to jump into it. Like I was saying, don't let your emotions make you make a decision without thinking it through. So we didn't want to jump into it, but we did get approved and ended up qualifying for it. So we were very.
Is that the house you bought?
That was the house I bought. I bought the first house I looked at. So
very good.
But don't do it the way I did. Always get pre-approved before you look at homes.
Yes, it is sad when somebody starts looking at houses and then they fall in love with something that they can't afford.
Yes.
Nobody wants that. That's not fun. You need to kind of stay in your zone. And again, that's part of being, financially prepared to buy a house. You want to make sure that you're buying within your means. Nobody wants to mess with your quality of life so that you can't go and have dinner with, your family, or you can't take that trip that you've wanted to make because you've got this exorbitant house payment that's eating up all of your money. Quality of life is important. You need to be able to do the things you want to do. And a lot of times I do see people, buy a house that is going to stretch them every month. And that's not what I want for anybody. I want everybody to have a life outside of their house.
Right.
Get to closing. How was closing?
Closing was great. We closed at 8 a.m. bright and early on the day we were supposed to close. We had a few bumps in the road with my loan required a few things, so we were okay. Is closing gonna get pushed back, or we ended up closing on time. And then we actually rented a U-Haul and moved in the same day. It was the most exhausting day of my life, and I would highly recommend the moving companies. We have tons of local good moving companies around town that I would hands down recommend and call them. I know I will be doing that the next time we move because that was a 12-hour work day. It was labor. But closing was great, and then we were happy at the end of the day. So
My husband always says, life is 99% maintenance. Now that it's all said and done, are you glad you did it?
I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad that I didn't wait, like I was saying earlier, because if we did wait, the mortgage rates would have been higher for us, and then we may not have been able to afford this exact same home one year later. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, closing should be a celebration. That's the fun time when everybody signed the papers. I love it when everybody is happy at closing. The seller's happy because they've sold for a price that they're happy with. The buyer has purchased at a price that they're happy with. It should be a celebration. In Tuscaloosa, our prices, when people come from out of town, they always tell me, oh, you're pretty proud of your property here. And we are. We've got a winning football team. We're very diverse in our economy. We've got Nucor Steel and BF Goodrich, several hospitals, of course, the University of Alabama. We've got Mercedes-Benz up the road, the water facility that I don't think they finished building yet, but it'll be finished shortly. We've got a lot of varied industry here, so we don't see as many foreclosures as the rest of the country. Because if any one particular industry, doesn't do well, we're kind of covered by other things. We've just come off a seller's market with interest rates being so low. Now interest rates have crept up a little bit. I wouldn't really say it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. Buyers do have a little more leverage in terms of sales price and maybe getting some closing costs. Sellers, because there isn't a ton on the market, they have a little bit more leverage because inventory is so low and there's not a whole lot to choose from out there. So I don't think it's heavy one side or the other right now. But I do think that if interest rates, they've come down a little bit, they come down a little more next year because it is an election year. I think we're going to see a lot of buyers come into this market. So now really probably is a good time to make a move if you're interested in buying or selling a house, because once that competition comes in, you're not the only one at the party anymore. You're going to have some competition. You're not going to get as good of a price on a house as you might get right now. You're not going to get the seller concessions that you can get right now. And then if it should drop significantly, you can always refinance it. So it can be a win-win. Our market in Tuscaloosa does tend to stay pretty strong. And when people do complain a little bit about our price points being higher, I just tell them that you're going to be happy when you're ready to sell, because our land and our property does really do well in Tuscaloosa. So just to recap, first-time home buyer, do your homework, talk to several real estate agents, make sure that you find a real estate agent that will call you back and that has a lot of contacts for home inspectors and electricians and plumbers. They've been doing it for a while. You feel comfortable with them. You're going to be spending some time with them. And there's a lot of real estate agents out there. So it's okay to find one that you like, that also does a good job. Make sure that you find a lender. Again, make sure that they answer the phone, that they will answer your questions, that they reach out to you to make sure that you've got what you need so that when you find that perfect home, you're ready to go. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Carry On with Carrie Fitz, and we will see you next time.